Welcome back. The Department of Energy launching the Speed to Power initiative. It accelerates project development of America's large-scale grid infrastructure. This initiative will work to ensure the U.S. has the power needed to win the global artificial intelligence race while meeting the growing demand for affordable, reliable, and secure energy. An Energy Department analysis shows that the current rate of project development is inadequate in supporting the country's rapidly expanding manufacturing needs. Joining me now is U.S. Energy Secretary Christopher Wright. Secretary, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And I want you to walk us through the project, but first assess this demand story that you've walked into with AI.
Oh, it's fantastic. You know, AI is coming. We want it to come to the United States, not dominantly to China or elsewhere in Asia. The president's all in on it. We've spent a lot of time with the big hyperscaler developers who were very worried about the ability to build things in America. They're going to build overseas. But we've told them the Trump administration's different. We want you to build here. We're going to get barriers out of the way and make it happen right here in America.
So tell me about the project.
So I got asked by a reporter yesterday, hey, Trump's president now. Why is everything under construction, solar or batteries or wind? And, of course, the answer is because that's what you could permit during the Biden administration, right? For 4 years, you couldn't build the stuff that provides around-the-clock power that could power AI or resource manufacturing. That's all you could get permitted. So this power now is how can we help you, developers, expedite your project, to build new transmission, to get a new generation source online, or new technology that will allow us to get more out of our existing grid. We need all of that to stop the rise in electricity prices, bring industry back to the United States, and thrive with AI. But with this administration, we're going to get it done. You will see amazing amount of construction and a very serious pivot away from the nonsense and towards common sense.
So you know, these are long-term projects that companies want to invest in. How can we have a confidence that this is going to be in place for the long term so that we know that companies like Chevron and Exxon and the big guys who are spending huge amounts of money will actually spend that money knowing that things are not going to change in another administration?
Yes, Maria, good point. Ultimately, we need to get permitting reform legislation through the House, through the Senate, and signed by the president. I think there's some growing bipartisan consensus around that. I think the Democrats realize that build nothing anywhere ever, that strategy wasn't winning for America, and it certainly wasn't going to work for AI, and it certainly wasn't going to allow manufacturing to reshore here. So, look, it's politics. That'll be a battle or a challenge, but I've been talking to people on both sides of the aisle. The president's got amazing power of persuasion. Hopefully we'll get a permitting reform bill done in the next 12 months.
What are your expectations of this aggression on Russia, from Russia, rather? I mean, we've been talking about drones that Russia sent into Poland, into Romania, and everybody wants the Europeans to do something about it. We know President Trump is doing everything he can to stop this war, but we have a statement from Ursula von der Leyen, and she says that imports of Russian LNG will be banned. Exemptions for Rosneft and Gazprom will be removed. This coming from the president of the European Commission on this 19th package of sanctions against Russia. What's the impact?
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important. Russia funds their war machine from oil sales and from natural gas sales. It's pretty simple. That's it. And in fact, Maria, if you go back to the start of this war started because of bad energy policy. The Biden administration was slow-walking natural gas exports to the rest of the world. We saw a spike in global natural gas prices from seaborne LNG in September of 21. 6 months before the war started. That spike in prices gave the go-ahead to Putin that now's my time of maximum leverage. The West has lost their way on energy. Prices are high. They're dependent upon us. And they amassed troops on Ukraine. And 6 months later, they invaded. So the only way to get them out is common sense energy policies. Don't buy energy from your allies. Buy energy from your allies, not your adversaries. Don't enrich Russia by stupid policies that just drive up the price of oil and natural gas. That enriches him and enables his global ambitions. We got to all band together, get common sense on energy, reestablish tight partnerships between Europe and the United States, and we can supply the energy they need. That's President Trump's agenda, and that's what I spent 9 days in Europe trying to trying to sell with great meetings, great reception.
And do you feel that you're going to see increasing business so that the U.S. can sell oil and gas to our allies in Europe?
Oh, absolutely. No, the Europeans know the mistake they made. Nobody can change history or can rewire it. They want to get off Russian natural gas. They want to get off Russian oil. They want to get off dependence from Russia. And wow, what better way to sign long-term deals in a partnership with the United States? Yeah, it's not arm twisting over there. It's just candid dialogues about the best pathway from here to there. But I think it's quite uplifting. President Trump had a great meeting in the UK as well. They get the same thing as the continental European nations.
Yeah, and in the meantime, former Vice President Al Gore is accusing President Trump of waging, quote, a jihad against the renewable energy transition, Secretary. Gore claims that the president is more aggressively opposed to clean energy now than during his first term. You're speaking at the New York Times Climate Forward event in New York City this week, talking about climate change and the administration's reversal of Biden-era energy policies. What do you want to say to Al Gore and the skeptics on this?
So Al Gore's nonsense is exactly what got us in this position. He started peddling climate nonsense 20 years ago. The Arctic was going to have no ice anymore 10 years ago. Well, this year we had well more ice than we had 10 years ago in the Arctic. He just started to peddle this nonsense. The world was going to heck, but no problem, with lots of government money, we can change the energy system. Well, $5 trillion of global expenditure later, and congratulations, wind, solar, and batteries are almost to 3% of global energy. And everywhere they've had high penetration, more expensive prices. A complete train wreck. And Al Gore, like most people that peddle nonsense, doesn't recant. He's just doubling down on this stuff. But that's why I'm going to New York. That's why the president's going to address the United Nations General Assembly. We're just trying to bring back common sense. Get people to talk about what we actually know about climate change, a slow-moving, gradual phenomenon, nowhere near a crisis or a disaster, and the facts that our efforts so far to displace hydrocarbons in the energy chain have been just wildly unsuccessful. Let's be a little smarter about it. Let's focus on the things that can actually move the needle, which is basically natural gas and nuclear. Those are the needle movers we could have if you really wanted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
And do you feel that the U.S. is aligned with our European allies on this issue? I mean, you just mentioned your trip to Europe. You had a 10-day trip to Europe. You stopped in Milan, Brussels, Vienna. Aiming to advance the president's energy agenda there and strengthen those partnerships with our allies and promote a secure global energy future after the major EU trade deal involving $750 billion in U.S. energy purchases, another $600 billion in EU investment by 2028, Secretary. Do you feel that Europe is aligned with the U.S. on that issue? And tell us more about the trip. What did you learn from our European partners?
Yes, so I would say in the broader objective, of course, to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, very broad agreement across the Europeans, which was great. We have a huge thing we're 100% aligned on. On the kind of pivot away from this climate is everything, let's make energy expensive and try to squish hydrocarbons out of our energy system, which was wildly ineffective in Europe as well. Still over 75% of EU energy comes from oil, gas, and coal. So, look, half of the people in Europe know that was the wrong answer, and they'll say it out loud. I would say the majority of the other half know that was the wrong direction, but are reluctant to say it out loud right now. That's fine, but they're looking at more constructive ways to pivot, to lower their own energy prices, and certainly to get rid of their dependence on Russian energy. And the other folks, the sort of true believers, the Al Gores, they're a small minority, and we actually have good, productive dialogues going on with them as well. So it was just a great trip. I was in Milan, I was in Brussels meeting government officials, I was in Vienna at the International Atomic Energy Agency. There we talked about rising nuclear energy in the commercial sector. How do we grow that globally with U.S. leadership? And we talked about the problem with Iran and non-proliferation and Iran's threat to world peace, Middle Eastern stability and peace globally. So that was a great coming together. There's nothing like meeting people in person and having dialogues, sometimes in public and sometimes behind closed doors. But I think Europe is embracing President Trump's leadership as well.
I think that's true. However, they're still buying Russian oil. Were you able to understand why Europeans are still buying Russian oil, in effect funding the war on Ukraine?
Well, they're trying to get off of that. Of course, we think they should do it faster, and there's an argument they can do it faster because they don't directly buy Russian oil now, but Russian oil goes to almost all of Russia's oil exports goes to China, India, and Turkey. But when it goes to India and Turkey, it gets refined into gasoline and diesel and jet fuel, and a fair amount of that still gets sent to Europe. They don't want to keep doing that, so we talked about mechanisms to do it. Look, they're moving slower than President Trump and I would like, but they're moving in the right direction, and I'm convinced we'll make huge progress in the next 12 months.
All right, we will leave it there. Secretary, great to see you. We're watching your work, and we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.